very good afternoon to all of you. First of all, let me thank Balipara Foundation for giving me this opportunity. It was in late 1980s. I used to come here, just next to this house, and there used to be a pond. There used to be a pond, and we used to come there to swim. My house is, I bought and bought up just next to this resort, and after 1980s we used to walk to this hillock. There used to be a stream, and we used to again take bath there, go to the top of the hill, and we used to release the mango there. The mango tree is still there, but trees are gone, and it's replaced by the people here, and the entire landscape of this area has changed. So this is, I'm not that old, but this happened in my lifetime. So I have seen the changes happening in this place, and this is, I'm sure is true for entire Northeast India. Most of us have gone through similar experiences, how we have lost forest, how we have lost other wildlife habitat like the lake or the wetlands, grasslands, and there may be multiple factors that were contributed to it. And also there are some hopes also to how to bring back those old habitat or to its kind of original states, and that's the vision, I guess, is the Great Forest Vision 2030. And to speak on this, we have a very esteemed panel, and I would like to start with Dr. Sarela Khaling. So what do you think are the major drivers of forest cover changes in India? So there is no need to say the Northeast is incredibly rich in biodiversity, so it's still a biological frontier. So as we saw a little bit earlier, that new species of organisms are being discovered every day, but we are losing these species and their habitat at a much larger rate. So what do you think are the major driver of this forest cover change or habitat loss in Northeast India?
Good afternoon, everyone, and I thank Balipara for this opportunity. I think the entire time we've been discussing all these threats, and I think some of the drivers and some of the issues are not new to many people. I think if we look at it, when we look at forest loss, we have to look at the historical situations. So I'm not going so much into the history, but our work, even in North Bengal, or even in all the states of Eastern Himalaya, we've seen there's been a lot of historical drivers of resettlement, drivers of large infrastructures coming up. So we actually come with a history. Of course, the colonial times also already created some sort of a situation for us, which has again made it very possible and very amenable to have a lot of land use change. So I think one of the main things that we have faced all over Northeast India, and in the morning Saurav, he gave some statistics about how much forest we've lost. I think it's the land use, land cover, and I think you will agree with me that now there are several drivers to that, as we can see. And I wouldn't like to go into the nitty-gritty of that, but I think one big thing, of course, climate change is the overarching that is faced globally, although we have very little contribution to it. But I think land use, land cover change has been one of the most important things. And that again leads into, you know, like what sort of a development trajectory that we have planned for our region. You know, how we have, are we placing biodiversity in the center of our development planning? I don't think we have. Also, I think because of our infrastructure, whether it be for built up areas or urban areas, the kind of agriculture policies that we have taken up, the intensification of agriculture also has led, I feel, has led to and driven a lot of our changes in our, the land use change and in the loss of a lot of our forest cover. And again, added to that, in the modern times, we have things like, a lot of monoculture and commercial agriculture coming up. So it's not only about one sector, but we have to look at it from a cross-sectoral purpose and cross-sectoral drivers of how we have lost a lot of our forests. And there are so many drivers. I think it's also very, very case specific. And in Sikkim, somebody spoke saying that about the glacial lake outburst flood, which we recently had. And although there were predictions, the Department of Science and Technology had all the data, all the satellite data, but because there was so much of rainfall, so partially caused by the, the melting of glacier, but a lot of it is also, people are saying it's due to, there was a lot of rain and a part of, the slope coming down. So that has also led, so in a way, climate change is a global phenomenon. The impact is very, very local, and the sufferers are again very, very local. So that has also been one key driver. So all these larger, I think, thinking about our development planning, about our land, which leads to land use, land cover change, has already done a lot of, being some drivers, I feel, of forest loss. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarla. So in recent time, we have also seen that there are a lot of changes in policies, particularly kind of a dilution of the Forest Conservation Act, which was passed by the Parliament recently. And in fact, there are also push for some of the monoculture plantations in this region, particularly the oil palm plantations. So, Northeast India and Andaman Nicobar Islands, which are extremely fragile ecosystems, are being the target for this oil palm expansion in this area. Yes, of course, we need oil palm because we are importing almost 99% of oil palm in India, and only 1% is being produced, which is fulfilling the demand. But at the same time, I think we should also be a little bit concerned about the future of this delicate, ecologically sensitive areas. So my question to Dr. Dipankar Saharia is, how do you think the impact of all this new development that can have impact on the balance between the economic development and the environmental conservations in the Eastern Himalayas?
Yeah, thank you so much, and thank you to Balipara Foundation for inviting me. First of all, if I speak only about Northeast particularly, and I speak also about the national level, forest in Northeast is not just a commercial resource, it's a social and environment resource. So as we have seen in the past, the major cause of reduction of forest is degradation rather than deforestation. Now why degradation? Because the communities depend on the forest for their subsistence. We do grazing, we take out the fuel wood, and all other useful material, whatever is required. Therefore, the major cause of degradation of the loss of forest from very dense to moderate dense. If you see the report of Forest Service of India 2021, the very dense forests are decreasing, but moderate dense forests are increasing. This is basically because of the degradation. And now, how do you increase it? Now, if you go to the Forest Conservation Act also of 1980, then a very useful Supreme Court, judgment that came up, that any part could be taken up as the forest, and the changes that has been proposed, during the current bill that is still not passed of, the Forest Conservation Act 2023. Now, there are major objections if you go through that bills by several of that, members from the standing committee, going to like one of the major, the cause of objection is about that 100 meters from the international border, you can go ahead with any kind of infrastructure development. Now that is a cause of concern, because if you see the northeast, if you go 100 kilometers and develop infrastructure, you know, we have a very, very fragile ecology. We all are from northeast and we understand. So those kind of things has to be taught, you know, very specific at the subnational level. And also, you know, how to involve the community. You know, without community involvement, nothing will move in the northeast, if I say, and not in the northeast. All over India, the community involvement is must, but how to incentivize them? You know, you have the Red Plus. Red Plus is in the national level, you have a policy. We cannot do it in the subnational level, you know. We require state level policy to get Red Plus funding. We had some very useful reforms, the JFFC that came in. The 2006 we have, you know, the very important of, you know, providing land rights to the forest communities, to individual, rights. So those are very important. And also we have the sacred groves in the northeast. So all these are very important, you know, sacred groves in natural, but these two are very important. But the whole, you know, idea behind, you know, conservation of forests through JFCC does not work out because the funding was not there. Now how to get funds? You know, then, and forest is a, you know, in a concurrence list of the, our constitution. So therefore, you know, all state, even Nagaland, we have the highest forests in Nagaland, Mizoram, Arunachal, Manipur. They're more than 70% of the forest cover. But how to make it, you know, sustained? How do you make it sustained? By involving the community, because the community has the rights. It's very different than what, you know, there are several areas in Jharkhand or all where, you know, maybe 6 scheduled areas are still there, but in the northeast is very different. We have to have a different policy, a state level policy, and the sector has to definitely agree to it, because anything that do in the state level, we have to get it passed and probably make, you know, UNFCCC agree that, you know, Red Plus is something that we agree, so that we can incentivize the communities, you know, being there in the northeast. And I would be really candid in saying that, you know, global funders are not interested to fund us a Red Plus project. They would rather go to a, rainforest, you know, Indonesia or some other South American country to fund a Red Plus, because then their cause would be highlighted. But I think for sustenance of the forest, you have to have a different set of policy for the northeast. We have individual efforts. We have the forest man, not only because he is coming to Light. I am from Udalguri district originally. I know where, you know, near the Dhansiri, river, 600 hectares have been, you know, redone with new forest. So those are individual efforts that are on, and that all can really contribute. And degradation is the main issue. And I think we have the regulatory mechanism. We have the forest department that take care of that, this illegal logging doesn't happen. So all these are there. In spite of this, I think subnational policies, the state level, in the council level is very important, and we have to convince the central government that yes, this is the way of coming out and how we can really change. I spoke only from the northeast perspective. So thank you so much for now. I'll add more if I can. Thank you.
So thank you so much for this outlining the challenges of implementing the acts and other things in Northeast India, which is really complicated. In fact, the council area, and there are more than 300 tribal people or indigenous people here. One important thing that you raise is the degradation of the forest, and I also believe in that because I worked in Upper Assam, and I realized that though forest is there, but if you go inside the forest, so you will not see any tree saplings or seedlings. So these have been completely wiped out. So from the satellite will give you a very wrong impression of the forest being very nice. Inside it's highly degraded. Even the good forests, so-called good forests, are from internally degraded. And one more important thing that is also, I think, I observe is I think we talked about forest degradation and forest loss, but the forest fragmentation is very prominent. And because of the forest fragmentation, even during the climate change scenario, even we put a lot of effort to restore forest, and if these two good forests are wide apart, So they may not serve the purpose of, say, connecting or movement of the species. So maybe the big, large species can move across, but there may be some smaller species which may not move across this forest. So I would like to know Michael Dawson's views about first of all the Great Forest vision, and also about what kind of interventions that you are planning to do, and how in the morning also I asked sort of about it, how it is different from, say, other like a trillion trees campaign. So what makes this effort a unique one?
Thank you for raising the point about connectivity, because the main reason why we chose these ambitious numbers, in part, of course, it sounds really great when you say 1 billion trees, but for us the focus is less the billion trees and more the million hectares, because it's only if we work collaboratively with all these organizations, TERI, ATRI, and of course we have Bhutan Ecological Society, Bhutan Trust Fund for Environmental Conservation and Friendship. That's the only way we can achieve a certain scale where we can move towards that question of ecological connectivity, of bringing degraded ecosystems back and building a bridge between them, so that of course wildlife can move more freely, we have more resilience for nearby communities, and of course all the various cascading benefits of restored ecosystem services. And that was why that's why if you look at a lot of our messaging, it's 1 billion trees, 1 million hectares, because I think on the global stage it's easy to get seduced by the idea of 1 billion trees, but it's important to come back down to this very basic fact. And what we have now in COP28, we launched our first rapid scaling portfolio, and we have proposals from all the different organizations, and we're doing a mix of work. So the idea is not just to do one form of ecosystem restoration, but for example, ATRI, which is working in the Sikkim, Darjeeling area, they're looking at a different form of land restoration, very smaller scale restoration, focused on also agriscapes as well, doing a lot of conservation of what already exists, right? TERI has a large-scale proposal with Assam and Nagaland, which is a mix of a carbon market program, but also working in Assam to do the homestead farming, agroforestry-based plantation, and also more broadly forest restoration. At Balipara Foundation, we've of course put in a proposal for our regular Rural Futures restoration as well, but also the Rural Futures Fellowship, which is the idea that we train young people to become champions of restoration down the line. And that of course connects back to the idea of how do we get to connectivity, which is you need to seed a lot of this right now in different communities through young people. And we have then mangrove restoration, which is taking place in the Sundarbans of Friendship. So it's a mix and match of different solutions, each tailored to the very specific ecosystems, the very specific social and ecological contexts within which the organizations are working. And that's what makes it different from a big ticket tree planting campaign, which we've seen a lot of. And in the past 2-3 years, there's been a lot of news about what's been happening in Himachal Pradesh, right? So the idea is to move away from that and really work at the grassroots, but take that to scale. That's what this initiative really hopes to enable.
And also, I think one more important issue that goes hand in hand with the forest restoration or rewilding is the issue of invasive species. In most of the places where the forest could have been naturally grown with minimum assistance, the invasive species is causing a huge problem. So I think it's not only adding something to the ecosystem, but also removing something from the ecosystem. I think we should also, particularly the younger generation, should keep that in mind. And one important aspect, in fact, Dr. Dipankar also talked about the community-based conservation in Northeast India, which is, we have a rich legacy of community conserved area in Northeast India. And we have Dr. Vanessa with us, and she worked extensively with the Bugun community, and I would like to ask Vanessa about her experience working with the Bugun community and where the community-led conservation fit into this great forest vision 2030.
Okay, thank you. So, good afternoon to all. I'm grateful to Balipara Foundation for the invitation, and I'm so glad to see the birth of the Great People Forest Initiative, because today in the world we are losing natural forest at the rate of 10 million hectares a year. And so forest restoration is a part of the solution, yet a narrow focus on tree planting makes forest restoration seem technical, when in fact it has significant political and governance dimensions. So the challenge we are facing is to improve, as you say, the integration of local governance in the implementation of forest restoration and conservation, especially because community forest management systems have been historically effective in protecting environment because of the way of thinking and the way of being of the local community who are or were animists. So in this system of thinking and knowledge, human beings are part of what we call the nature. So to maintain prosperity of people means to maintain healthy environment. But market economy and also Christianity conversion have changed this way of thinking, this way of being. So now all this local knowledge systems are disappearing so fast. So it's crucial and urgent to first document the different local system knowledge, and second to work towards the recognition of this local ecological knowledge. So as we all know here, the question is no more do we need forest or not, but the question is which kind of forest we want, for who, and how we manage to have resilient forests to climate crisis. And so as Vandana Shiva highlights it so well, diversity is the key. So in 2006, a new bird species was discovered in Arunachal Pradesh, the Bugun lyosishla. So it was named like this because it has been seen for now only in Bugun territory, located in the West Kameng district of Arunachal in the Eagle Nest Wildlife Sanctuary. And so this place now has become a bird watching site. And this little bird stream becomes the emblematic animals now of Bugun community alongside the red panda. And actually, Bugun people embrace biodiversity issues and forest ecosystem conservation, developing ecotourism in a way to preserve the forest and have alternative incomes from it. And in 2017, the local forest department and the Bugun villagers created Singshun Village Community Reserve next to the Eagle Nest Wildlife Sanctuary. And actually this new community conserved area, it's a good example of bottom-up approach involving youth, local leaders, which is also another key to the success of forest ecosystem conservation efforts.
Thank you, Vanessa. I think the community-led conservation, and there are multiple very unique initiatives like the Sacred Group in Meghalaya. And I think some of you must have known about this safety forest and the supply forest reserve in Mizoram. So Mizoram government in 1955, so they declared three types of forest. One is called the safety reserve forest, and the supply reserve forest, and the protected reserve forest. So I think this the safety or the governance of this forest is ingrained in the system, right? And I now I would like to ask Dr. Dipankar Saharia that we keep talking about the international collaborations because that is also very important because this entire region is ecologically one unit, right? So though there are political boundaries, but I think it's also very important to say make linkages between different tribes to transfer their knowledge between different tribes in how they are conserving the forest or how they are managing the forest. So I think along with the international connections or international collaborations, I think we also need to encourage the collaboration between communities. I think that will really lead to a greater, say, benefit of the rewilding. And what are the challenges when, so international challenges, I think it's quite obvious to know, but what are the challenges you think would be when we try to, say, connect different communities in, say, realizing one vision of rewilding Northeast India?
Yeah. So, in the Northeast, we have the highest number of, different tribes living together for, centuries and, very long. Now, if you talked about the sacred groves, there are about 2 lakh sacred groves, in India, covering 2% of the total forest area. So just think about, how religion and indigenous knowledge are conserving trees. Now, if you talk about Northeast, all 7 states have sacred groves. We know more about Meghalaya because, it is more of a tourist spot. But if in Assam, in Manipur, in Arunachal, everywhere, in Assam, the Satras and, those places, we are conserving trees. Now, as far as Northeast is concerned, we are different. We have our own indigenous knowledge. In fact, Terry has worked, documenting the indigenous knowledge, and we are doing a project with the Northeastern Council and along with BRDC of Meghalaya. But the important, definitely the challenge that you have said, connecting communities and, sharing the indigenous knowledge, and also not only knowledge for conservation, but also for traditional medicines. Those are very important, we really need to document and, keep those records, or it will get lost. The current project that we are working in, we are doing video documentation, we are doing the documentation in our, own, in the hard copy form. So all these are challenges, but the way of, connecting community, that has to be, the state has to really support that, I think, to get communities of different tribes. And first, let's make the effort in the state level. At the state level, then we come in the Northeast level. Because conservation in the Northeast, and especially because it's important, because we are also meeting the SDG goals. SDG 13 talks about climate action, 15 talks about, ecosystem restoration, and 1 talks about poverty. So these 3 are the main important, sustainable development goals, and I think those are very important for Northeast. So, thank you.
I think, Sarla, you must have gone to length and breadth of Northeast India. So we keep talking about a lot of these concepts, but what are the challenges when you go and actually wanted to implement certain things in the field? So what are the challenges do you face? So because there are certain ideas which are extremely novel. They were formulated, they were conceptualized, they were very, very noble cause. But when it comes to the ground, so many ideas fail. So what do you think from your experience in Northeast India that we need to take a lead from there and avoid those things?
You mean in terms of restoration?
Yeah.
I think people have already said the community participation. I think one of the important things is that the land tenure system in itself in Northeast is so diverse. In states like Sikkim and West Bengal hills, where most of it in terms of restoration, the forested land is owned by the government. In in Assam, in West Bengal and in Sikkim. But if you go to the other states, I think a lot of it belongs to the communities. So I think one of the main important things is that, I think even restoration activities need to be co-designed and worked with the communities themselves. And also, there are so many opportunities that you talked about. For example, in Mizoram or in Nagaland, where the state has already has customary laws in place. So there, I think, all these community conservation reserves are already coming. Whereas in Arunachal, where there is already community-owned land, but yet we still don't have strong customary laws per se, which has been, legally adopted by the state. For example, in Nagaland or Mizoram, for that matter. So I think these things have to be really taken into consideration. And I also feel that in the mountains, a lot of land actually belongs to the forest department. And we have to, at least for us, for A-Tree, we see a vision of working directly even within protected areas and reserve forests with the government. In fact, in Sikkim, we've already signed an MOU and they've given us a mandate that A-Tree has to work with them. And their mandate is oak forest restoration in protected areas and reserve forests. So also we are signing a project agreement with the government of West Bengal, where we have to help them restore some of the protected area forests that have been infested by native bamboo species. So I think taken into consideration even the policy level institutions, I think, and I think landscape integrity. That is what we've been working in the Kanchenjunga conservation landscape. We were saying it's not these patches everywhere, but we are trying to link protected areas between corridors. And corridors are again socio-ecological landscapes where people are living. But then again, at the same time, it's not just the forest department that is there. There is the agriculture department, the land revenue department, the roads and bridges department. So how do we connect with them? So I feel it has to be a very intersectoral approach, even when we are trying to do this landscape restoration. And my vision and our vision in A-Tree is this. And the other thing is also innovative governance systems. When we do this and we restore land, then what is the management system that we are talking about? So we are also talking about the other effective conservation measures, OECM, as the 30 by 30 Kunming biodiversity framework. So we are also trying to look into that and have a very, instead of having a very piecemeal kind of an effect, have an integrated way of visioning the entire landscape when we move towards restoration. I think we should really take care of that. And finally, I think the monitoring and evaluation part is very important. How do we monitor and evaluate restoration? What are the indicators? What are indicators in trajectory? What are the short-term indicators? I think these are things we really need to be careful about. And also, I think finally, since we are A-Tree, science behind and evidence and science should be able to, tell us how we move forward in this ecosystem restoration. Thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to go to Michael. Since you are being instrumental in starting the Rufu Fellowship, where I was also part of the selection process, and I found the tremendous interest in the youth in restoring projects. So, what are your view about the role of youth in shaping the future rewilding or restorations program in Northeast India?
Well, young people are the next generation of leaders, right? So we can do good work, but if we don't build up the next generation of leadership, who's going to continue that work? Who's going to make sure the trees that we plant survive for the next 30, 100, 150 years? So on that very basic level, that's why young people are important. But the other reason young people are important is because this region has, it has that what we call the demographic dividend, right? There are a lot of young people and a lot of them want to do something, but they don't have the opportunity, they don't have the wherewithal, they don't have the skills. And because of that, they end up migrating outwards. They go to places where they face economic insecurity, they face, frankly, racism, right? And if we can create these opportunities around rewilding within their communities, it firstly meets the goal of us achieving that ecological connectivity that we talked about, right? You need people at the grassroots, in each community. You can't just have an organization sitting in a Guwahati or sitting in whichever city, you can sit in a city, you can go to the field, but unless you live it every day, it's not going to survive. The rewilding and restoration is not going to survive. And that's where young people from communities have a really big role to play, because they live in those communities, they know these stories firsthand, they can really mobilize their people because they are from there, they have shared messaging, shared values that they draw on and say that, this is why we need to do this. And that is so much more powerful than someone outside a community coming to them and saying, why don't we take a chance on this? Right? It's very different when someone who you've known your whole life, you've seen them growing up, and they come to you and say, I think we should do this, and I can see how it's benefited other people, why don't we try it out here? There's a lot more power to that. So that's why I think young people are really important, and that's part of why we started this fellowship.
I think we are running out of time. Like a 30-second, I think I would like to ask each panelist to talk, what is your vision for Great People Forest 2030, starting from Saglaka. So 30 seconds.
My vision is of a multifunctional landscape where, biodiversity is conserved, but also, people and their livelihoods are secured.
Regarding this rewilding policy, I think we have to be very careful about the difference between tree cover, which might be monospecific plantation, and tall and mature forest, able to safeguard the biodiversity and resist to the climate crisis. So we have to be careful of these two different kind of planting.
I'd like to talk about climate action. Currently, if you see that our total average production of calculated carbon per hectare is about 0.8 ton. So if you can conserve forest, and especially from the northeast, you can really, you don't have to do anything, you just do the restoration and conservation rather than, the degradation that is taking place, and you will earn carbon credit, and that is what I want, that the communities should be, getting their financial part so that, they can really help us conserving the forest. Thank you.
My hope is very simple. I hope that with this initiative, the rest of the world learns to care about the Eastern Himalayas as much as all of us in this audience care about the Eastern Himalayas. And that care translates into actual support, actual material support, and work that actually ultimately benefits the people and biodiversity on the ground so that they have greater resilience for the future that they're facing. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I think we deserve a big round of applause. At the end, this is quite an interesting discussion, and we deal with different challenges, and there are different opportunities of rewilding in Northeast India. And I think with this vision, I think we will be able to do this because as Sarla was talking a few minutes back, that the discourse of people from plantation to restoration, people started talking more word like a restoration or rewilding. I think that itself is a big shift, I would say the paradigm shift in the narrative. So I hope in the next coming years we will be able to release this vision, and more and more people will join hands in restoring the habitat of Eastern Himalaya. With this, I'd like to thank all my panelists and all the audience for listening. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, prospective panelists.